Thank you so much for coming over to my presentation. After lunch, it's always difficult to be awake. However, I'll try my best to give you some exciting knowledge that I have gained over last few years about vendor security. To begin with, my name is Lokesh Pidawekar. I am part of Cisco's cloud and application security team, where I help the product teams as well as the internal teams whenever they want to consume any third-party cloud provider. So we perform that review, end-to-end review, and then help that cloud service or the vendor to remediate the issues that we find during the review. Till now, I have touched more or less 150 or 200, 150 to 200, between 150 to 200 cloud providers. So I think I've got a good experience from working with smaller vendors to big names. All right, so I will be sharing names in this presentation, and please use your wisdom if you want to use those things in your organization. And again, I'm not affiliated with any one of the providers or the vendors that I'm talking about here. It's just my experience working with them or working on those tools. Now that we have got the disclaimer away, let's start the show. So, since we are in this theater kind of a setting, I'll be assuming things on your behalf. And by the way, it feels really exciting, like a theater. It's awesome. So in terms of the third-party cloud provider ecosystem, initially it was more like, let's use some third-party vendor for our marketing catalog. We want to use them for smaller things. However, the enterprises have evolved, their risk appetite evolved, and finally we are using them for our enterprise businesses. Many of our HR vendors are third-party cloud services, your CRMs, your infrastructure mainly. Everybody starts building their company on Amazons, on the Googles and everything. So everybody is working with one or the other cloud vendor in order to get things done. Now, in terms of assessment, however, we are still not there. If you talk about how many small vendors or many startups, or even when I work with big organizations, when I ask them, how do you assess your providers, I get one or the other answer that I'm going to share in the next slide. However, before that, I love this quote. Microsoft Excel is one of the tools that most of the companies are using to assess their cloud vendors, and it was the case with us as well. Within Cisco, we also used Excel sheets a lot. Like 5 years back, we were doing most of our assessments on Excel sheets. However, we graduated to an internally developed tool now, so it's more automated. The question and answer, if you have worked on any of the assessment with Cisco, then you'll know that there's a portal where you can log in and get those things done. In terms of assessment tools, usually, as I shared in my previous slide, Excel sheet is the number one. And then you've got Word documents, you've got internally developed tools, you hire third-party consultants. There are consultants, they try to work on these things as well. And finally, if you are very confident about the vendor, you just meet them over a cup of coffee and then sort things out. Now, I've been talking about Excel sheets, but what happens in those Excel sheets? So usually, if you follow Cloud Security Alliance, they have come up with a questionnaire, CAIQ kind of a thing, where you can have questions ranging on different topics, and those questions are being sent to the provider. Then they answer those questions. As an assessment team, you review those responses, you meet with them, check whether those responses are meeting your criteria or not, and then finally, if there is any mismatch, for example, you require a certain thing whereas they are not able to provide, you give them that kind of a finding. Finally, they remediate if you are able to influence, and then after remediation, you approve. And this cycle goes on and on for all the providers. Now, in terms of the categories, it ranges from just application security. So sometimes I've seen people asking questions about application security only. For example, oh, do you perform dynamic testing or not? Do you perform static testing or not? Do you perform threat modeling for this application that we are using or not? Or do you perform any rapid patching for your application? So those are the application security related things. However, if you look at the CAIQ, or if you look at any bigger questionnaire, it will cover several other categories. So you'll have your identities and access management. Do you perform any single sign-on, SAML 2.0? Do you support SAML 2.0 or not? Or do you support OAuth or not? Data security. How do you encrypt the data? Do you store backups? How long those backups are stored? If we want to get off from you, is there a way where you can securely delete the data? So those kind of questions will go into data security and so on. Means I can talk about these questions all day long and it will not end. But just to give you a glimpse, like what kind of questions are there. Now, if you were with me till now, so we started with Excel sheets, we started about the process, we then discussed some of the questions that are done during this process. Everything is sequential, and then everything is point in time. So the interview process, when I talk to the provider or when they give me their pen test report, it's a point in time situation where you are giving evidences for that moment, and then sometimes you don't go back to that provider. Yes, they are approved, they'll always be secure. However, in this day and age, it's important to go back to them and ask questions again, or maybe review and find out a way to do continuous review. For example, like I reviewed one provider. At the time of assessment, they were supporting SSL version 3, and that becomes a finding. It was given to them. They said, okay, we'll fix it in 6 months. They fixed it. So now after 6 months, they are like, yeah, we don't support SSL version 3. I did an SSL scan. They are not. However, after 1 year, when I was trying to reassess them, they are still there. They are still on SSL version 3. And I'm like, you guys fixed it. And then, yeah, we had to roll back. Some of our customers were using older browsers. And that was like, wow. Now, I did not know, or my company did not know about that risk for 6 or 8 months when they were just using it, when they were still supporting SSL version 3. So that's the point in time problem. Also, if you again following the process, it's time consuming. You send the Excel sheet, then you receive the response, then you meet with them, then you tell those things, so and so forth. So this is time consuming, and one thing that we don't have in this day and age is time. If you ask anyone, this is a time consuming process. It takes 3 weeks. They will ask immediately, can we automate this? So that's the problem with this process. And then also we are relying on their answers. We are not able to verify it independently. It's inconsistent. Some people are doing Excel sheets, some people are doing 5 questions, 10 questions, so on. So these are the challenges. All right. So now, when we were looking at these challenges, we wanted to identify how we can solve this. And during my internship, I got exposed to pen testing. I loved it, and I loved the recon phase a lot, because you gather information, like whatever sources you can put your hand on. And that's where we thought that why can't we use the tried and tested method that was being used in penetration testing, red teaming, in this vendor security assessment. So we started brainstorming the idea of collecting information from internet, and this became the foundation of the solution. So now again, this solution is still work in progress. However, the proposal is you collect information from several sources that are already scanning or giving information about these providers. So I briefly introduced you all to a source which was SSL scanning. Now that there are several websites, tools available on internet where you can just put the URL and it will tell you the SSL score, for example, which SSL version they support, what kind of cipher suites they support, do they support any modern cipher suite or not, HSTS, everything. So that is the kind of resource that I am talking about. Now this is only related to TLS. So instead of asking questions to the provider, what kind of SSL TLS version, SSL or TLS version do you support, we'll just do a scan and we'll just go back with the report if we have anything. If not, then we'll just continuously scan. Maybe every day we are just scanning all the URLs. Then there are other sources, for example, something like Shodan or HTBridge mobile, where you can scan the mobile app of the vendor, or you can perform vulnerability, whatever vulnerability information is out there, so that you are getting that flow, continuous flow. Now, all these sources, you have to identify which are the high impact ones versus the low impact ones. For example, SSL becomes a high impact for us, where we are continuously monitoring, and then if there is any mismatch with the kind of data that we are putting, so again, the requirements change based on the data classification. If you are putting a sensitive information, then TLS 1.2 is absolute must, versus if it is a marketing catalog, then we have some affinity where the appetite is like, yeah, we can survive with TLS 1.1 as well, because it's just a marketing catalog. So those kind of things, based on impact and accuracy, the overall score must be calculated. Now, this is the basic table that I'm sharing what we can do with this kind of data. But if you notice, there are two columns which are not very much into the zone of collecting information. For example, SOC 2 is the one that I'm referring. Now, SOC 2 is something, SOC 2 type 2 is something that you cannot get directly from internet. You have to sign an NDA with the provider, and then they will send you that SOC 2. So the plan is not only relying on the information that we are getting from internet, but also massage it with some of the information that you might receive through SOC 2 reports of these vendors. So that way you can get an overall health of the provider at any given point of time. Yes, their SOC 2 type 2 is still valid, and the other things that we found out on internet are green. So this is good, versus, yeah, other things are yellow or red. So let's go back to the provider and ask questions. So let me share more resources. So SSL scan was one of the resources. Now let's map these resources to the categories that we discussed earlier, like the categories of questions. How can we identify more resources that will help us bridge the questions that we are asking in different categories? So that's where I started searching, and whenever I come across any tool, I just started bookmarking those things, and finally was able to come up with a good list of 20-25 providers that can give me information on a continuous basis. So I've documented those things as well in the GitHub page, the Awesome Cloud OSINT, where you can find out more about this. But quick overview of this, you can find SSL score if the provider is giving you mobile app, because like everyone is mobile, so you can have mobile scans so that their new app, if it is vulnerable to anything or not, you'll get it easily. Then there is IP reputation, whether that provider is hosting or they have an IP address which was flagged for malware or anything that you can find. Breach information is an important thing. It's always important to keep a tab onto those Google queries where you can just search for breach information, or those Twitter accounts that are reporting this information, because your provider might not be sharing that thing with you the moment they got breached. However, through other resources you can get to that, and then the next thing will be, oh, we heard in the news that you got breached. Did our data was part of that data breach? So that kind of a thing will happen once you start building this monitoring capability. Now, to give you examples of what these tools look like, so let me take the example of mobile, because I'm assuming SSL is a very minimum bar. So most of you would have done SSL scan in the past, or maybe doing it today. That's why I'm considering the category of mobile app. So the HTBridge is the open or rather I'll say freemium solution which is available. Currently they support only Android. So what I used to do earlier, whenever we are consuming any cloud service, I was just putting their app. If we are going to use it, then we'll just put their app. Try to identify the potential flaws. Now again, this data is very basic. The reason is it's an unauthenticated scan. So if you are asking the provider about a pen test report or a vulnerability scan report for their mobile app, it will be much better than what this will provide, because that will be where the pen testers will try to identify other flaws, bypass authentication and other things, versus a vulnerability scan, they might use authenticated scan. So that's a better one. However, this is giving some information. Oh, they have a hard-coded secret in their Android app. Very easy. The code is not obfuscated. Problem. They started supporting a library which is obsolete. Absolute spot on. So you can go back to the provider and do it. Now, that's how you get those things. As you can see in the screen, this little utility can find out issues with the mobile app. Now, I was talking only for the category I was sharing about. Most of the tools were in free, whereas there are premium vendors as well. When I say premium, those are the vendors who are providing this kind of service, searching the internet or searching the mobile apps, and then providing and then giving a security information. So those vendors are the vendors that you can also tap onto. So what we are doing internally is to have a mix of both. So wherever we can find impactful data, wherever the trust is high on the data, we are going with that. It's difficult sometimes to convince the management that we are going to use a solution that will cost money and that will help us reduce 5 questions. However, in the longer run, it helps, because if you are on the other side, then you are just filling out questionnaire day in, day out, like 150 questions, 200 questions, and then people are just hiring big teams just to answer. However, if you go back to them, ask only 2 questions, 10 questions, then the team will be very happy. So in a longer run, this will be very helpful. Now, let's come back to this. So we started having some free tools, and then we started looking to buy, as in getting licenses for some tools as well. So I'll give you an example of NowSecure Intel. Now, just to have a parity, the previous example with the free category was HT Bridge. Similar space company named as NowSecure, they also play. They have a tool called as Intel that can go into Play Store and iTunes and then identify the scores. So that's good. Now you can have a premium tool that can identify. So if you have 100 apps that you are consuming, you can just put those things here and start monitoring those things. Whatever alerts you are getting, send it back to the vendor, and then they will be able to work on those. Now, not only this helps in after the fact. For example, till now I have been sharing the advantages in the form of, we are using XYZ app, and we assess them, approve them, and now we are monitoring. So that's the value. No, not only that is the value, it also provides value before the assessment. So even before the assessment or before any acquisition, you can start monitoring that particular company and then get to know how's their health. It helps twofolds. One, if you are just going to assess them for a lower data classification, you might want to just use that available information and auto approve them without going through this questionnaire phase. Or if you are going to ask questions, it will be less questions. Also the acquisitions and partnerships. So if you are going to make an acquisition just to get the health, instead of asking questions around, you can get a continuous tab for last 6 months, how did they respond, and then make a decision. And finally, it is more consistent approach. Now, in the question and answer approach or Excel sheet approach, it's more perception. So whatever the engineer thinks or whatever the other company thinks, if the engineer thinks that yes, this I'm fine with TLS 1.1 because I have not seen any attacks, although the policy says 1.2, but I'm fine with that. So now you don't have control. As a company, you're allowing another vendor to have a lower grade of TLS or data encryption. Yeah, we just do disk level encryption. We don't encrypt data on database level or on app level. So those kind of things are easy when those kinds of things will change from person to person. However, if we have this approach, then at least a section of questions will be very consistent. So that's the advantage. But with all said, again, recon has its own disadvantages like false positives, limited information, and other things. So we cannot ignore that. And it requires a lot of engineering. For example, I've been working on this for last 2.5 years, and we are still, like, we got 2 commercial tools and some free tools, and trying to build more redundancy, trying to build more trying to come up with more calculation to come up with that number. So that's still going on. Finally, I will conclude my presentation with 3 things. Every company is using third-party clouds in some way or the other. Some are assessing them, some are not assessing them. So that's a fact. However, it is very important as security professionals to identify the the company that you are using, whether it's secure or not. So if your company is not doing it, at least try to do it in some form or shape. The second thing that I will leave you with is the solution. So one of the continuous feedback that I get from all the cloud providers that I have assessed, you are asking too many questions. So that's the direction that we have to go, where we are not asking too many questions, so that the relationship is still built where they are ready to talk to us. Finally, in the future, I expect we can have a mutual portal where everybody is sharing their security things, so that it's we don't have to talk to the vendor directly, and we can get whatever information we want. Maybe it's an API, so that we can just consume whenever we want and continuously tap onto our vendors. So that's pretty much it from my side. I would like to thank BSides for giving me opportunity to share some of the things that we are doing in terms of vendor security, and also to all of you for coming to the session, especially to my colleague who came here all the way to support me. So thank you so much. If you need more information, you can contact me over Twitter, or this GitHub link is where I'm putting more of these continuous security solutions. So you can use that as well. Thank you so much.
I was just checking if you had any questions. Okay. Seems like you're building an internal tool for your company. Is there a productized version of this?
As of now, it's not. But we also plan to share more algorithm on how to come up with the risk scores. So that's where we are going to share more details.
All right. Thank you.